Tousuke Rokudou is a first-year student of Aomori High School. However, the school is full of delinquents and he is of a calmer disposition. Due to this, he is always bullied by his classmates, with the only exception being his two friends who are also the same as him. Tousuke's life soon takes a drastic turn when he received a package from his grandfather containing a scroll said to possess the power to save him from impending danger. Tousuke is soon shocked to find out that the scroll's effect is different from what he imagined. The scroll acted like a charm, making Tousuke attractive to the delinquent females, especially Ranna Himawari. Join us as we follow Tousuke and his friends on their journey at Aomori High. Year 1, Class 2 was a class filled with major delinquents that caused fights in and around the school. One of them, named Inuma, forced Tousuke to catch bread rolls with his mouth, while his other delinquent friends watched and laughed. They had their fill of laughter and sent Tousuke back to his seat with his friends. Hinomoto Masaru, nicknamed the Colonel, and Kijima Kota, nicknamed the Chief. They were soon caught looking at one of the delinquent girls. Afterwards, they went to the toilet to complain about the bullies, while sharing a stall in fear. After school, Tousuke went home with his friends for a gaming session and found that he received a package from his dead grandpa. He opened it to see a scroll and a letter telling him to use the scroll if he ever was in danger. The Colonel suggested that his grandpa go for a brain scan, as he might be suffering from dementia or other old age-related diseases. Tousuke reminded him that his grandpa is already dead, and dead men tell no tales. As soon as he held the scroll, it glowed a purplish light, and a strange pentagon-like symbol appeared on his forehead. The next day, he went to school as usual and wondered what kind of power the scroll gave him. On his way, he was harassed by thugs and he stood up to them, excited to try out his new powers. But he was soon punched back to reality. The female thug defended him and he was let go. Tousuke thought it odd. During lunch, Inuma was about to pick on Tousuke again when Tsubaki, a female student, stood up for him. She suggested that they pick on one of his friends. After lunch, Tousuke called his friends to the toilet stall they once shared and told them of the strange happenings that had been occurring since morning. His friends thought it was a coincidence. As they were talking, Tsubaki snuck in the male toilet to talk to Tousuke and apologize for the way she treated him in the past and promised to not do it again. As Tousuke and his friends were going home, Colonel noticed that all the girls taking notice of Tousuke were bad ladies. Just then, Inuma walked up to the cowardly trio and asked what they've done to Tsubaki, who was his girlfriend. Apparently, Tsubaki had used a picture of Tousuke as her phone lock screen background. He became pale as a ghost, while his friends tried to bring him back to the present. The Colonel reminded him about the scroll, saying that there is no other explanation for the strange happenings since morning. Tousuke ran away to get away from all of it. Moments after, he crashed into a Harley Quinn-looking lady, wearing a school gown and holding a stick, who was coming from beating up a group of thugs. Their eyes met. The spell activated, and it was love at first sight for one of them. The next day, Tousuke found out that the lady he collided with went to his school. She bounced the chief off his seat so that she could sit next to Tousuke. But this didn't go down well with the rest of Tousuke's classmates. During a free period, Tsunoyama Takeru, one of Inuma's delinquent friends, went to shake down the new girl. He tried all his tricks, but she stared at him like she was staring at a brick wall with graffiti on it. Takeru threatened Tousuke to make the new girl talk. Just as he opened his mouth to ask her a question, she responded almost immediately, which freaked them out a bit. The Colonel then confirmed that the magic in the scroll made bad girls fall for Tousuke. The Harley Quinn lady introduced herself as Himawari Ranna, a student of the school, but it was her first time attending classes since she enrolled. Takeru felt ignored and he punched Tousuke out of frustration. As he landed the punch, Himawari picked the table by the legs and smashed it on his head. He opened his eyes in the hospital, with no memory of what happened, and Inuma and Tsubaki reminded him of the harrowing experience. Tousuke tried running away after school, but his friends convinced him to try and stay and defend Himawari, thinking she was weak. Just then, Himawari appeared on the bridge they were on. Her eyes met with Tousuke's eyes and she blushed slightly with the sunset in the background. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Inuma also saw his senpai, who was beaten by Himawari, along with his gang. He recounted the experience for Inuma. The next day, Tousuke arrived in school and was swarmed by all the delinquent girls at school. But but they were all chased away when Himawari appeared. Later during the day, Inuma threatened Tousuke, and he got scared and ran back to class to meet Himawari. On getting to the class, he saw Himawari with bruises all over. He asked why she didn't fight back, and she told him it was because she made a promise to him not to pick a fight in school. Tousuke vowed again to protect her, and then called out Inuma for a fight at the school rooftop. With legs shaking in fear, Rokudo Tousuke prepares to fight Inuma, the top delinquent at Aomori High. Inuma launched himself at Tousuke and got hit with a weak punch from him. Inuma returned the punch, and that was when Tousuke knew it was serious. Just then, Himawari appeared growling and baring her fangs like a cornered cat. Inuma continued pummeling Tousuke with blows while Himawari looked on angrily. Tousuke weakly called out to Himawari to help him. She ran like the Flash and punched Inuma with the power of Zeus's lightning. After school, Tousuke refused to visit the hospital and walked home in the rain. The next day, after the school bell rang for the close of school, Tousuke packed his bags and left for his house, but he was swarmed by lots of girls at the gate. He managed to pry himself from them and exited the school premises. Just then, Inuma called out to him to follow him to a ramen restaurant. They were joined by some middle schoolers, and they all enjoyed a happy meal together. Meanwhile, his friends were lurking at the alley waiting for Tousuke. After the meal, as they were on their way home, Inuma told Tousuke that the top dog at Aomori High was after him. Like clockwork, Tousuke became as white as a ghost after hearing the news. Soon after Inuma left him, Tousuke met Sasaki, a second-year student, who informed him that the Osanada, the top dog, is calling for him, and he must answer whether he liked it or not. Sasaki made fun of Tousuke about him looking like a little boy and not being able to talk to girls. However, the spell activated and Sasaki's girlfriend moved to protect him. This angered Sasaki, who threatened to beat him up. Just then, Inuma appeared at Tousuke's back and asks him to choose whether to run or stand up to Osanada. However, the colonel and the chief ran out of their hiding place and asked Tousuke not to do anything and just enjoy his school experience. Tousuke told them he's tired of running and doesn't want to get bullied anymore. The trio cried like babies and started to walk home. Moments after, there was a loud noise, and a part of the wall broke, revealing Himawari. She greeted Tousuke with a smile and a soft blush. Sasaki tried to attack Himawari, but Tousuke moved to protect her. Sasaki threatened them, but they all stand by Tousuke. They vow not to run and stand by him no matter what the top dog says or does. Inuma then told him that Osanada was a girl. Tousuke freaks out like a damsel in distress. The next day, a little girl showed up in class 2 looking for Tousuke. Inuma told him that the little girl was Osanada, the top dog of the school. Osanada walked up to Tousuke and was about to fight him, but she noticed Himawari by his side, growling like a tamed bear. Meanwhile, the spell activated, but it doesn't affect Osanada the way it affects other girls. After a short confrontation, Osanada took Tousuke to the old school building to talk. She brought him to a room in the building. The spell soon started to take effect, but Tousuke vowed to turn Osanada into a good girl so the spell would wear off. After the talk, Tousuke headed back to his class. Osanada revealed that she failed twice and still was in year 1, and she was also in Tousuke's class. The next day, Tousuke began his plan on reforming Osanada. He proposed the idea of a plant diary among the students, but some of them were not in support. They quickly changed their minds after Osanada threatened to beat them up. Soon after, Class 2 students were at the school garden looking at the plants they planted and taking notes of each of them. Later that day, the students were comparing their notes together. Tousuke hoped that the class will keep this momentum and everything will turn out well. After school, Osanada's henchman was trying to get her to listen to his idea about merging with the top gang in their town, but she's not paying any attention. Osanada decided to not drop out of school, as she initially planned, because she met Tousuke and made lots of friends in school. She soon leaves for class, and her henchman planned a sinister action. Later, after school closed, Osanada went to check on her plants before going home. She got there and found out that the plants have been destroyed by boys who were fighting nearby. Her henchman Kurokata said he saw the whole thing. Osanada then proceeded to beat the living daylight out of the boys.
Get out of here. Get out of here, man. I'm saying.
Was still at the garden. Upon arriving there, he he saw her surrounded by a bunch of unconscious boys. Tousuke was surprised and asked Osanada why she beat them up. Just then Kurokata appeared and told him that Osanada can do whatever she wants because she's the top dog of the school. Later in the evening, Kurokata and Osanada both meet with the members of the Onishima Union, the #1 gang in the city. They are planning on joining the gang. However, one of them does not want a girl to join their ranks, but Osanada showed him why girls perform better than boys. Later that same evening, Tousuke sat in the rain lamenting how he failed to reform Osanada. Himawari was also with him, and she refused to leave. Tousuke then asked Himawari to save Osanada from the bad eggs of the city. Soon after, Kurokata and Osanada were given their membership rings of power. Just as Osanada was to collect hers, Tousuke arrived with Himawari, and he started to recite his plant report while Himawari beat up the wannabe gangsters. Tousuke's words reached Osanada's heart, and she decided to stay in school and be better. But the Onishima Union had called out the rest of their members, and they were arriving in droves. Chief and Colonel came through the back door and helped them escape while Kurokata stayed to act as a diversion. On a weekend, Tousuke decided to practice how to ride a scooter. He borrowed one from Inuma, who got it from one of his senpai. The scooter looked like it got a haircut from a GTA barber, but Tousuke decided to ride it because Inuma went through the trouble of getting it for him. Soon after, Tousuke rides the scooter for his practice lesson before he gets his license. However, a self-proclaimed female police officer chased after him and tried to run him down. He dropped his wallet while trying to evade arrest. In a shocking turn of events, the spell activates and she falls for Tousuke like a Disney princess. After getting his license, Tousuke and his friends were heading home when a young lady named Himeno Azami walked up to them and introduced herself. She returned his wallet and swooned like a maiden as their hands touched. Azami tried to get Tousuke to stop riding the hideous scooter, but he refused, and this made her run away crying. Tousuke fell to his knees in dismay, having made a girl cry for the first time in his life. Azami soon returned with her motorcycle and a sidecar attached. She and Tousuke then go for a ride in the city. On the ride, Azami showed her true colors, and Tousuke saw that she was an adrenaline-pumped lady who loved to go really fast on bikes. The next day, Tousuke was with Chief, Colonel, and Osanada. Colonel was showing off his bike to the gang. Just then, Azami arrived on a different motorbike and proclaimed herself as Tousuke's personal chauffeur. The new bike didn't have a sidecar, and Tousuke was forced to ride behind Azami and wrap his hands round her waist. Azami dropped Tousuke close to his house, and they parted ways. On his way home, a strange person stopped Tousuke and asked him if he knew the crazed motorcycle girl who has been injuring his friends. Tousuke noticed that the stranger was wearing a ring with Onishima Union's mark on his finger, and he became scared. He was worried about Azami and informed his friends. The uneven gang tried to get Azami's attention by riding outrageous bikes on the streets, hoping that she chases them. She took the bait, but she didn't listen to Tousuke's advice to stay home the next day. With Tousuke's decision, the cruising trip had to be cancelled. Colonel was the one assigned to break the news to Himawari, and he did so albeit very scared and almost peed his pants. The next night, the Onishima Union bike crew were waiting for their leader Furukawa Aoi, but he was running late. However, Aoi had been ambushed by Azami earlier than expected. They fought each other until they got to the Onishima hideout where the rest of the gangs were. He then offered her a chance to join their gang or be dealt with. Azami declined, and Aoi called on his men to deal with her. Just then, Tousuke arrived with Chief and Colonel and Inuma on their respective bikes to help Azami. Meanwhile, Himawari was at the park sitting on the bench waiting for Tousuke all day, but he was a no-show. Later that night, some guys were trying to get her response. When she didn't respond, they decided to go and see the match of the people who challenged the Onishima Union. As soon as they mentioned Tousuke's name, Himawari followed them silently. Furukawa Aoi explained the game of deathmatch tag to the challengers, but Aoi insists on Tousuke riding with him, and the game ending once Tousuke is thrown off his bike. Azami protested, but Aoi made the request a mandatory requirement. Tousuke agreed readily and soon climbed the bike.
Ha! Gay!
Moments after, the deathmatch started, and Aoi is at full speed and standing on his bike like a daredevil performer. As the race continued, Inuma and Chief couldn't keep up with Aoi, and they left Azami to do the job. Inuma and Chief are also fielding the remainder of the gang. As the gang members were chasing them, they soon saw a Harley Quinn-like lady with a wooden sword riding a Harley-Davidson bike. The lady then began to dismantle their bike's tires with her sword one after another. The lady, also known as Himawari, then met up with Inuma and Chief. She soon gets off her bike and waits for Tousuke, choosing to believe in him as all his friends do. Meanwhile, Azami is still keeping up with Aoi, and Tousuke is still hanging off his back. They both are not giving up without a fight. Aoi remembered Azami from the policeman's crash. He then told Tousuke that Azami is trying to get revenge by any means necessary. Tousuke, seeing that, turns around fearlessly and calls out to Azami. Aoi picks up speed and Tousuke screams like a Dragon Ball villain. Just then, Aoi made a very sharp run on the road and Tousuke falls off. But just like an Olympic gymnast, he managed to grab onto Azami's hand while still touching Aoi with his legs. This made him the winner of the deathmatch tag. Soon after they return and meet up with the gang, Himawari ran to meet Tousuke and he apologized for lying to her, but she was happy for his safe return. Aoi accepted his loss and handed over the leadership of his crew to her, but Azami stopped him and asked him to go and see the policeman together. The policeman was happy to see the two of them. The next day, they then planned to go on their cruising trip. Azami insisted on acting as Tousuke's personal chauffeur, and Himawari sulked nearby. Azami also promised to maintain an even speed of 100 kph when she's riding her bike. The next day, some girls from a neighboring school wanted to see the guy every girl was mooning over in Aomori High. Soon after, they saw different girls fighting to carry Tousuke's bag, and Tousuke chasing after them. After school, the Tousuke gang all got together at his house to play games and unwind. Tousuke went to get snacks, and the rest of the gang were afraid to strike up a conversation with Himawari. Osanada took the plunge and started asking her questions, but she was answering like a broken record. Tousuke then came back with pudding and joined in on the games. Everyone had a great time at Tousuke's place. Although we didn't see any of his parents, they soon started to leave after it got late. As Tousuke escorted them out, he called Himawari back and presented her with a gift that he bought her as appreciation for always helping him out. The next day, the school embarked on a cleaning exercise and Class 2 was in charge of cleaning the bicycle racks in addition to their classroom. After school, every student went to the bicycle racks, leaving the Tousuke gang in charge of cleaning the classroom. However, as Osanada and Himawari were in charge of cleaning the floors, they peeled off the tiles with their freakish strength. After the general cleaning, Tousuke, Chief and the Colonel meet up at their favorite restaurant for drinks. Some thugs were messing with them, but they paid them no mind. Then Tousuke overheard a lady talk about how her hairband was out of style, and that was what Tousuke gave to Himawari. Tousuke started to worry and overthink about the whole situation. Meanwhile, the girls meet at the mall to discuss clothes and makeup stuff. Everyone showed up casually, but Himawari came dressed in her uniform. Tsubaki promised to give her fashion tips. They saw the band that Tousuke gave Himawari and giggled loudly because of high school love. Tsubaki, who was also a model for the popular Galteen magazine, offered to give Himawari a full fashion makeover. The remaining girls also asked Tsubaki to pick out outfits for them too. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, the thugs decide to play a prank on the boys, but before they could do it, the rest of the gang arrived and they chickened out of their prank. The gang sat down and hung out together. Inuma then explained to Tousuke the consequences of his past actions with the Onishima gang. Tousuke took down their number 3 officer in a 5-man leadership. The other leaders would be interested in him. Inuma then went on to explain the hierarchy in the Onishima gang. The top dog is Matsugami Adoji, the leader who rebuilt the group after it disbanded a year ago. Tousuke offered to apologize with Himawari backing him up. Inuma finally accepted. Meanwhile, Doji came to Aomori High with a couple of his lackeys. However, he was not looking for Tousuke, but for Himawari. The next day, just as the Tousuke gang were planning on how they will apologize to Doji, Tsubaki ran to tell them that the leaders of the Onishima Union is in their class. Tousuke and his friends ran back to the class and entered just as their teacher was introducing Doji and friends to the class as the new transfer students. Doji then struck up an inspirational speech about how they want to be a union trusted by all.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
And hope to work with Tousuke on this. Osanada accepts the proposition and they shook hands on it. Doji then came up to greet Tousuke. Tousuke noticed that he was trembling but didn't know why. Soon after, the news of Aomori and Onishima working together spread like wildfire. Students started speculating about the alliance, and some went as far as naming Tousuke as the mastermind behind all this. Much later, the class monitor announced that the school festival is approaching and they need ideas on what the class should present. She suggested that a committee be set up for that. Her suggestion was met with silence, as the whole class was fixated on the new classmates and gang leaders in their class. Tousuke, Chief and Colonel were reverted to their former meeting place, the toilet. After their discussion as they left the toilet, one of the Onishima leaders that looked like Sanji when he was little entered the toilet. Their eyes met and the spell activated, and much like Sanji, the leader started showing affection towards Tousuke. Seeing the unexpected phenomenon, Tousuke ran like he was preparing for the Olympics out of the toilet. Meanwhile, Himawari is left alone in the class. Doji summoned the courage to speak to her. As this was going on, Tousuke was getting chased by the Onishima leader, who then confessed that he was in fact a girl and his sister was a boy. They both exchanged genders. She told him that she and her brother used makeup to conceal that fact. She also said she can help Tousuke achieve that effect too. She then went on to confess her feelings for Tousuke and run away blushing furiously. In the class, Doji kept asking Himawari question after question, but she wasn't answering and he couldn't read her facial expressions and body language too. Just then, Tousuke entered the class and Himawari switched and became a much livelier person. Doji then realized that Tousuke was the key to unlocking the secrets in Himawari. After a while, the buzz died down and the Onishima Union attending Aomori High became old news. And after the Onishima Union resolving the dispute between Aomori High and Harakura High, they became overnight heroes. Soon after, the time for the school festival came. The class decided to do a yakisoba stall for their festival exhibit, but Himawari and Doji convinced them to go with Tousuke's idea of them doing a play. After school, Himawari waited behind to help Tousuke with the script for the play. Tousuke tried asking her about what play she liked and what she loved to read, but she couldn't answer, so she decided to go to the library and start the reading process immediately. After she left, another leader of the Onishima Union, Yashiya, entered the class and came to talk to Tousuke. He was a bit surprised, but he recovered and started talking. She also confessed her feelings to him and offered him a letter with a love emoji seal. However, just before he could collect it, Himawari entered and Yashiya took back her letter and left the classroom, but not before having a tense moment with Himawari as she left. Himawari entered with a handful of books for research towards the play. Meanwhile, Yashiya tore the love letter in anger and vowed to have Tousuke all to herself. After a lengthy research, Tousuke chose Momotaro for their school festival exhibit play. They soon started to cut cardboard props for their play, and Tousuke offered to go and get more. He promised Inuma that he won't get in any trouble whilst gone. Soon after, Tousuke was on his knees surrounded by an all-female motorcycle gang who all stared coldly at him. A few moments later, the spell activates and the girls are all doting on him. Just then, the president of the gang, Otohime, appears, and she apologized to Tousuke on behalf of her members. She then asked if her and her gang can come and check out their school festival. Tousuke readily agreed. Just then, Himawari came to look for Tousuke. Otohime recognized her and ran to hug her. They all moved to a nearby restaurant to talk better. Otohime explained that Himawari was formerly an honorary member of their gang more than 2 years ago. Otohime then explained how Himawari joined and everything that happened that led to her leaving. Tousuke found out that it was Himawari that caused the disbanding of the former Onishima Union a year ago. He wondered if Doji knew. Much later, Tousuke came to help Rhino with the painting and artwork. He commented her on her talent, and she blushed slightly. Soon after, Chief, Colonel and Inuma also came to help with the painting. They also brought food, extra cardboard, and extra paint. Then, in an act of manliness, Chief and Colonel took off their tops to show their bulky and lean bodies respectively.
Oh! Ew! Dude! What the fuck?
They were like opposites of each other. Inuma also took off his shirt, and the guys tried to get Tousuke and Reino the cross-dresser to take off their shirts too. However, Tousuke saved the day. Soon, they began working. The next day, the students of Class 2 met up in the gym to practice their play as the rehearsal was going on. Suddenly, Doji and his men all walked out of the gym in silence. Tousuke was worried, but Doji had other plans in motion. The festival is in 2 days, and Tousuke is worried about who to invite. Himawari doesn't care. As long as Tousuke is there, Tousuke used this chance to teach her how to be more considerate towards other people. The next day, Doji was trying to frame Otohime's group Ryugu as the gang behind the attacks on students of Aomori High. Tousuke tried to talk them out of it, but just then, Reino walked in, injured Abd, carried by his sister. He labeled Ryugu as the gang that beat him up. The students are riled up, but Tousuke isn't convinced. Doji asked Tousuke to stand with them to fight Ryugu, but he couldn't, so the students of Aomori High turned against him. However, Inuma believed him as he doesn't trust the Onishima. He also promised to help him get to the bottom of the issue so that it will not affect the school festival. Meanwhile, Chief and Colonel decide to run their own personal investigation to confirm whether what Doji said was true. Doji, on the other hand, is trying to convince Himawari to leave Tousuke alone. He sweet-talks her and uses Tousuke to get to her emotions until she agreed. Doji then told Tousuke that he will be using her to fight against Ryugu the next day. Tousuke is worried about how he will resolve the matter. Later that night, Colonel and Chief met with Inuma and Tousuke and told them that the Ryugu gang aren't bad. The lies were all formulated by Doji, but Tousuke and Inuma already knew that. They also found out that it was the Sumiya siblings that were cosplaying as the Ryugu gang and roughing up students of Aomori High. Colonel also explained that the performance by Reino earlier this afternoon might have been helped by makeup. Meanwhile, in the city, Doji planned to use Himawari to completing crushing the Ryugu group. His whole plan rested on it. Tousuke and his friends were also planning on protecting the Ryugu and preventing them from coming to the festival the next day. The next day, all the delinquents of Aomori High were standing prepared by the school entrance, waiting for the Ryugu gang. They all stood with menacing faces, but it made them look like they want to go number 2. Doji is dressed like the Japanese Michael Jackson, and his subordinates were dressed like backup dancers. Himawari was dressed in her usual schoolgirl outfit. Meanwhile, Tousuke and his friends were running round town to try and stop the Ryugu gang from entering Aomori High. They divided themselves into groups with Inuma manning a side, Chief and Osanada at another side, and Tousuke and Chief on another end. However, Tousuke and Chief were beaten by a stranger who impersonated Ranna and claimed to be her brother. Soon the Ryugu group arrived at Aomori High, and the students led them to the gym for their delinquent face-off. The Ryugu gang followed and took their bikes with them to the gym. The students were led by Onishima's number 4 Hando. Hando asked the girls to take off their helmets. The girls took them off and were revealed to not be girls. They were the gang members of Aoi's former group dressed as women, complete with the makeup and fake plots. They were led by Azami, who the henchmen mistook for Otohime. As this was happening, the real Ryugu gang arrived at the school and met nobody at the gate. Just then, Tsubaki ran towards them and warned them to run away before the students got back. They were about to go, but Yashiya, one of Onishima's leaders, stopped them and stalled for time till the students and Hando got there. Otohime urged her people to go, and they all left except one. Yashiya and Otohime started exchanging blows, but Hando took Otohime's subordinate hostage and threatened to break her arm if Otohime does not cooperate. Otohime agreed, and she was taken to the rooftop where Doji was. Meanwhile, Tousuke and his friends were running to get to the school. As they got there, they met Tsubaki, who told them that they were late. As they were talking, Doji contacted them through the walkie-talkie that he stole from them earlier. Doji told Tousuke that Himawari was not meant for a world of normalcy. Her power is best utilized in the world of crime. But Tousuke disagreed and responded that the decisions of people aren't for him to decide.
Daddy, chill.
Tousuke vowed that he would protect Himawari and make her happy, but his friends misread it as it sounded like he just made a marriage proposal. Tousuke and his friends started to move to the rooftop, but were stopped by every delinquent in Aomori High. They must overcome them and get to the rooftop before Himawari beats up Otohime. On the rooftop, Otohime and her subordinate were tied up in front of Doji. Just then, Himawari entered with a menacing look like an enraged lioness. Otohime was surprised to see her. Meanwhile, Tousuke and his friends charged the delinquents with the goal of getting to the rooftop before Himawari beats up Otohime. As the fighting continued, Azami came on her bike and offered to drive Tousuke to the rooftop in the easiest and fastest way possible. Tousuke climbed on, and his friends also held on to him. Azami then proceeded to ride the bike into the glass entrance door like a GTA character. Everyone fell off except Tousuke. Azami made the first turning, but Hando was waiting for them. Azami tried to use the bike's full speed to force her way through, but Hando acted like a Baki fighter and stopped the bike with his bare hands, and also throwing Azami and Tousuke off. The rest of the crew caught up to them, but Hando wouldn't let them pass. Osanada tricked Hando, and the rest of the gang passed and continued running. Osanada told Hando to not fight, but he wouldn't listen. Hando continued to throw punches, but Osanada didn't take them seriously. Hando then punched her and sent her flying to the bleachers. They had a test of strength and Osanada won. She also stayed with Hando and consoled him after losing and made him feel better. The next turning was also manned by one of Onishima Union's leaders, Kohei. Inuma chose to fight him as they have history in the past. Inuma started to fight him, but Kohei was sleek and dodged all his punches while throwing some of his own. After a while, Kohei knocked Inuma to the ground. Kohei then went on to beat Chief and Colonel but left Tousuke alone on Doji's orders. But Inuma did not give up and continued to fight. Even though he was enduring punch after punch from Kohei, Kohei saw his chance and threw the deciding punch, but Inuma dodged it and also threw one of his own. However, Kohei dodged it too, but by doing so, Inuma was able to latch onto his hand and throw him against the wall like a football. Inuma then proceeded to throw two punches which knocked Kohei out like a light. But he couldn't continue the journey as he was tired after such a grueling fight, leaving Tousuke, the chief and colonel. The original trio soon got to the stairs, but they were stopped by the strange attacker from the morning named Amano, big brother of the Sumire twins. Tousuke intended to fight since he knew they wouldn't hurt him, as Doji had commanded them not to. Just then, Kazino, one of the cross-dressing Sumire siblings, appeared behind Tousuke, with her brother egging her on to beat him. Everyone on the staircase were in a standoff with each group with different reasons. The trio charged at the Amano on the staircase, but he pointed a fire extinguisher at them and opened gas on them. Chief and Colonel fell back because of the smoke and left Tousuke standing between Kazeno and Amano. Tousuke attacked the Amano, but he was held by Kazeno. Amano opted to teach Chief and Colonel a lesson while Tousuke watched. Just then, Kazeno revealed herself to actually be Raino and let Tousuke go. She then planted her lips on Tousuke's cheeks, causing him to blush. She urged him to hurry to the rooftop. She then stood in the pathway to stop her brother from chasing after him. They started to fight, but Amano had the upper hand. Chief and Colonel were worried for her. Raino declared herself to be her own person and continued attacking Amano. After throwing kicks and roundhouses, Raino finally defeated her brother. She urged Chief and Colonel to catch up with Tousuke, and she followed them. Amano felt alone and cried for his sister to not leave him alone, but she laughed at him and told him it was just a sibling quarrel. Meanwhile, Tousuke is on his way to the rooftop. He still remembered the peck and continued to blush, but he jolted himself and continued his race. As he got to the top of the stairs, he met many of his schoolmates writhing in pain on the floor. They looked to have been beaten by a strong opponent. Just then, a hand reached out from the door beside him and dragged him into a classroom. Except that it didn't look like a classroom, it looked more like a Shakespearean dungeon. Yashiya was sitting on a chair in the middle of the room reading a poem. As her love letter to Tousuke, this left him flabbergasted. He tried to use the tactic like he did for the others, knowing that Doji ordered them not to touch him, but it doesn't work as she whipped him across the chin. Yashiya then continued to treat Tousuke like a toy. She blindfolded him, but Tousuke became scared and started to lash out aimlessly. Yashiya became scared and thought that Tousuke might end up harming her. Tousuke took off the blindfold and found that Yashiya was afraid of him. He tried to use that to his advantage and said some cliché boss lines, but she doesn't fall for them. Instead, she intensified her attacks all for love.
Till it's cool, just cool, into the mouth. Nice.
Just then, Yashiya slipped on a bottle and fell towards the window. Unfortunately, the window was open and she was about to fall 4 stories down. Tousuke saved her, which surprised her. Yashiya's heart kept pounding and pounding. She screamed and passed out because of love. Tousuke took the chance to get to the rooftop. On getting there, Doji couldn't believe that his enforcers failed in keeping Tousuke away from the rooftop. Tousuke saw that Himawari was fighting Otohime. He then shouted her name loudly, but she couldn't respond. Tousuke then tried to move to save her, but Doji tackled him to the ground. But just as Otohime got tired and was about to be beaten by Himawari, Tousuke got free and blocked her. Himawari stopped, and Tousuke told her she shouldn't fight Otohime because she is an important friend. Himawari agreed. She then knelt down and gave Tousuke the hairband he originally gifted her. She then told him that their friendship ended there. Hearing what Himawari told him, Tousuke acted like a dummy for a few seconds trying to process what she said. Himawari told him that she wasn't a good person and Tousuke is. She said she never considered anyone a friend except for him. Tousuke disagreed and then realized that he doesn't have any power of his own except the spell, and that was the only thing that got Himawari attracted to him. He then promised her that he would grow stronger, to be able to enjoy going to school with someone as bad as Himawari. As he was saying this, they were both crying. Himawari was surprised to see tears fall down her face. However, Himawari urged him to stay the same, and Doji vowed to keep his promise. As Doji and Himawari were about to leave, Tousuke held Doji's arm and declared that they aren't leaving until Doji defeated him. Himawari tried to interfere, but Tousuke told her not to. Soon after, Tousuke charged Doji and he was knocked down by a Mortal Kombat type punch to the stomach. Doji then started to pummel Tousuke while telling him about the effects of his actions and how they will affect Himawari and cause her to move on permanently. But Tousuke wasn't going down without a fight. He realized that he hated Doji more than anything and turned that hatred into power like a shonen character. He then landed a punch on Doji's face, but that doesn't stop Doji. Seeing that Tousuke would not stop, Doji decided to break his arm and see as Himawari would act. Just as Himawari was about to act, Doji was pushed back by a kick. Tousuke thought Himawari had stepped in, but Reino, Chief and Colonel were the ones who saved him. They apologized for coming late. Reino wanted to continue the fight with Doji, but Tousuke stopped her. He wants to win the fight with his own strength. Just then, Osanada arrived with Inuma sleeping on her shoulder. Azami also arrived on her bike with Tsubaki screaming for help as she rode with her. Colonel then reminded Tousuke that everything he has done and everyone her has saved has added up to his strength. Doji saw that none of his people were coming, so he decided to take them on by himself. The Tousuke gang then charged, but Doji defeated them all. Doji then told them of his story about how he too was a victim of bullies. He decided to become friends with the strongest delinquent in town so that the rest wouldn't mess with him again. But in doing that, he lost himself. However, the gang was destroyed a year ago. He then decided to make new allies and rebuild the Onishima Union so that they can protect him in turn. Doji told Tousuke that he will never let him have Himawari because she's a killing machine meant to protect him and make him happy. However, Tousuke told him that Himawari has a kind side too, which was why she destroyed the Onishima Union in the first place and why she didn't using her wooden sword when she was fighting with Otohime. Moments after, all of Tousuke's friends resumed attacking Doji, but they were getting beat like fried chicken. Meanwhile, Himawari stood still like a statue. Otohime then went to her and asked why she fell in love with Tousuke. As they were charging and getting beat, Doji couldn't believe the courage that Tousuke and his friends were showing and became scared. Just then, Himawari stepped in between them. Doji thought she was going to protect him and smiled, but she knelt down and asked Tousuke to let her be with him again. Everyone was surprised at her politeness. Tousuke then knelt in front of her and offered her the headband she returned. She accepted it and smiled sheepishly. Doji was dejected. Just then his enforcers came and he berated them, but they still followed him regardless. After the fight, Reino and Kazeno started attending classes at another school. Yashiya disappeared into the wind. Doji launched the Onishima Union for the third time. and Tousuke was finally able to attend the school festival that was postponed. They acted their play and Himawari remembered their names for the first time ever. They received a standing ovation for their play and all was well in Aomori High. Thank you for joining us on this amazing journey with Tousuke and his friends at Aomori High, although we didn't get to see any teacher or principal. Kindly like, comment, follow us, and turn on your notifications so that you won't miss out on our new videos. And remember, you are strong and can do anything you put your mind to, so keep growing and making new friends.